Welcome to the Imagineering Education Podcast. This is Thomas Riddle. Thanks for joining us for conversations held at the crossroads of education and design, with a dash of inspiration from Disney's Imagineers. Each week, we feature pertinent commentary on relevant issues and informative interviews with leaders and practitioners from the fields of education, design, entertainment, and more. On this episode, we'll be exploring the power of stories and why they're important in learning and in life, with two people who know a thing or two about storytelling, authors S.T. Bende and Ian Doescher. S.T. is the creator of the Norse young adult fantasy series that includes Alfheim Academy, Viking Academy, and the Elska Saga. She has also written a number of Star Wars children's books, including Star Wars 5-Minute Story Strike Back and the Star Wars Galactic Adventure Storybook Collection. Ian is the New York Times best-selling author of the William Shakespeare Star Wars series, as well as other Shakespeare-inspired titles that include Much Ado About Mean Girls and Get Thee Back to the Future. I am truly honored to have them both join us today. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thomas.
Yeah, so I'm glad to be able to talk with you guys about stories. We talk a lot about stories on this podcast. And of course, Disney was a master storyteller, and Disney World, Disneyland, all the parks immerse you in stories. So since we talk so much about stories on here, we're going to be talking a little bit about stories today. I'd like to ask you, so what's your story? How did you get to where you are as an author now? And we'll start with ST, if you would.
I'm a longtime fan of Disney and Star Wars and Marvel and Norse mythology, and all of those worlds have played a huge part in my creative life. So I studied Norwegian with a lovely woman who became honorary family, and I had really appreciated all of the myths that she told me about and that I'd learned as a child. So my first series, I reimagined some of those Norse myths kind of as a way of thanking her for everything she taught me, since I wasn't necessarily the best language student. And I just kind of kept writing from there.
That's cool. Ian, what about you? How did you get into writing?
So I'd been interested in writing books for quite a while, really since my early 20s. But I thought I would write academic books because I was pursuing an academic path. And it was really only back in 2012 when I had the idea to combine Shakespeare and Star Wars that I ended up on this very different and way more fun path. But I'd been a Shakespeare and Star Wars fan really my entire life. Shakespeare since I was a freshman in high school, and we read Othello in English class, and Star Wars since before I have memories. I grew up, I was born in 1977 and grew up with Star Wars in and around my family with the toys and the movies on VHS and all that sort of stuff. So they are both things that were with me for a long time.
I think my introduction to Shakespeare was in 9th grade as well, and it was Romeo and Juliet. What about you, ST? What's the first Shakespeare you remember reading?
I think that was the first one I read too, and then I didn't understand. And then my teacher showed us the Kenneth Branagh Much Ado, and that was much more palatable for me and really kind of opened up the gateway to being accessible, which I appreciated a lot.
Those movies that Branagh did were really a gateway to introducing a lot of people to Shakespeare, I think, at least popularly. And I think the same goes for your books for sure, Ian. I know that we've had my partner in Star Wars crime, Wes Dodgens. We do Star Wars in the classroom together. We really promoted your book series as a way to introduce kids who may not really have an interest in reading Shakespeare, get confused by Shakespeare. The hook of Star Wars is amazing. So have you had much feedback from teachers about how great a tool that is, or how impactful a tool teaching Shakespeare with Star Wars has been?
Yeah, I've definitely heard from teachers who are using it as sort of an entry point into Shakespeare with their classes. So with my books, students will at least experience a little bit of iambic pentameter and some Shakespearean literary devices and references, but it's all sort of within a more comfortable context of a story that most of them know and know really well. And it's also certainly not as as difficult to read. I mean, it's not Shakespeare's language fully, of course, so it's easier to read, and I think maybe that helps it be an easier move than from my books into something like Romeo and Juliet or Othello or something like that. Once you've experienced some of the structure, and that is honestly, like, when I hear that from teachers that my books have helped students get into Shakespeare, it's the greatest honor I could ever have, because that was really one of my hopes with the books from the start, and it just really touches me to be used in that way, because my love of Shakespeare came really naturally and easy, and that's not the way it is for many students.
Right.
And so if I can help with that in any way, it means a lot to me.
So what do you guys think it is? We'll just stay with, camp out here with Shakespeare for a minute. What do you think it is that has made his story so enduring?
Well, I think for me, one of the common themes in the plays that I love is the same theme that I find in the Star Wars and Marvel franchises that we all love, is that found family. Like, he really does get into these characters that maybe don't have that network to begin with, but build them as time goes on. And like, I'm just thinking about Beatrice and Benedict and like that whole world that they create, because I know we were talking off air about enjoying Much Ado, just this new world that people are able to build for themselves, no matter what they've come from, is just so inspiring and gives so much hope for me, that I love watching that unfold in any format.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that. Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always loved Shakespeare's stories and his characters, and how you get to see inside their heads and what their motivations are and that sort of thing. It was always a thrilling part of reading Shakespeare for me, and then seeing it performed. And I agree with Esty completely. That's one of the things that we love about Star Wars, and we love about so many of the movies that we know culturally. And so, I think I don't think he's going to go away anytime soon. And really, the other thing about Shakespeare I'll say is that he continues to have modern relevance. I'm rereading the complete works of Shakespeare this year, and it's amazing the number of themes that he's writing about that feel like they could have been written today. Yeah,
and that definitely adds. It's a timeless quality, right? But good stories are like that. I think it goes back to Joseph Campbell and his monomyth, where all the world's great cultures share a common story. Heroes go through a similar trials, similar progressions. And Ian, you're much more well versed with Shakespeare than I am. Do you see those themes of Campbell's hero's journey play out through Shakespeare as well?
For sure, and that's one. For me, that's one of the direct lines. It sort of is a direct line through Joseph Campbell from Shakespeare to Star Wars, because there are so many of those same themes that, when George Lucas was looking directly at Joseph Campbell for, how to create this story, Joseph Campbell was, of course, studying Shakespeare for, among others, for how are great stories told. So it's no surprise that we see so many similar themes in both Shakespeare and Star Wars. Yeah,
ST, you have anything to add to that?
Well, I just appreciate the mythological overtones in Star Wars too, and Shakespeare, but that so much of Campbell's teachings are on the great myths and the archetypes, and that those all play out so beautifully in the original trilogy, and then a lot of the subsequent films and TV shows. You just see these myths that are very similar across multiple cultures, and these amazing stories that have survived forever, told in such an innovative way that we had never seen before 1977.
Right. Ian, I think you said you were born in 77. I was 8 in 77. Yep. So I was born in 69 and saw Star Wars on the big screen as an 8-year-old. And for those of us who experienced that around that age for the first time, that was something else. A lot of people have said life changing and all that, but as much as your life can be changed as an 8-year-old, but it was definitely it was definitely impactful, because I grew up in a household where my dad loved adventure stories as a kid. He grew up on Robin Hood and Ivanhoe and those stories of the Old West, and then chivalry and knights, and it introduced me to those stories through books and through film before I saw Star Wars. And when I saw Star Wars, it all kind of meshed it together in a new way. And I think that the great thing about Star Wars is that, again, like, there's so many common themes that all of the world stories touch on, and Star Wars kind of encapsulates so many of them. But I do want to go back to that one thing that you said, ST, about found family for a moment. Why do you think that's so important? I mean, we definitely see that through Star Wars, and you see that in Shakespeare as well. Why do you think that's such an important theme to so many people?
Because not everybody comes out of the gate into the situation that is their ideal. But when you watch Star Wars or read the myths, you see that what you get in the beginning isn't necessarily all for you, that you can go out and create your reality. Like Qui-Gon says, your focus determines your reality. It's my favorite line in all of Star Wars. And you can focus and create exactly what you want for yourself as a family, as a society, as a career. You have that power. And these films and the myths, they all show you how you can build the family you want, whatever that looks like for you. And I remember when we were watching, I was just watching season 7 of Clone Wars Saved, so excited. And seeing Ahsoka and Rex's friendship play out and realizing that they are such a beautiful example of a found family just absolutely made my heart so full. So when I see those little nuggets, I just get so excited, because I think that's a hugely powerful message to anyone, but especially to kids, to see, look, you can create what you need. Your focus will determine your reality, and your future can be whatever you choose to make it. Wow,
that's beautiful. Ian, what do you think about found family?
I don't think I can say it better than ST just did. It really was, that was really, really well said. I mean, honestly. Oh. And I think that, obviously the thing with found family is it's so important because it just helps you realize that what you were born with is not necessarily it. And which, for some people, what you're born with is great. For some people, it's not. Right. And so, I don't even want to say anything more because ST said it so well.
I agree. I think I mentioned this to you off air, ST, that at Celebration Anaheim, I think it was, I had the opportunity. Yeah, I had the opportunity to be on a Star Wars Rebels presser, and so Filoni was there and the entire cast. And so when it came to my time to ask a question, I asked them, "What did you think the big stories were, the big themes that you want students to walk away from when they watch Star Wars Rebels?" And Vanessa Marshall had an answer almost or very similar to yours, ST. But bottom line is, she said it's about family. And it's about family, how people can come together from diverse backgrounds and work together and gel together for a common good, common goal, and learn to love each other through their differences. And where we are currently in the world, I think that's such a beautiful message, that there is strength in diversity, that there is strength in pulling together and working with people who are not like us. That's one of the things I think that's an endearing part to me of Star Wars, is it, if you go back to the original trilogy and you go back to Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, 3PO, R2, Obi-Wan, the old gang.
Yeah.
Look at where they came from, and look at how they worked together, and look at how they became family. But Star Wars Rebels, to me, really is a story that went after it intentionally, and showing these how this family came together from people who really had no family. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and a beautiful message for us today, for sure. So what we're talking about.
I completely agree with that. I'm watching Rebels again too, and I completely agree. I haven't quite been able to articulate why that series is specifically the one that just grabs my heart so strongly, but I think that's it. I think they were very intentional in their building of their family and their driving home of that message, and that that completely explains it. It's just, that series is all about family, and it's so beautiful to watch.
Yeah, if you look at it, you have a bunch of people that were orphaned in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Hera and Sabine both had family, but they were kind of estranged from that. And of course, Kanan had lost his family, which was his master.
The Jedi.
And,
yeah.
Exactly. And then Ezra loses his mom and dad, and Zeb has lost his entire race. And
Yeah.
and Chopper, he's just a grumpy guy, So, but Hera becomes kind of the mother, which I love that they used her name as Hera.
Space mom.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly right. And they chose Hera from Greek mythology, the mother goddess. And she becomes the mom of the group, more or less. And I think it's just really beautiful to see how you have these people learn to accept one another. Because in those early episodes, I loved it, how Ezra and Zeb never got along. How Kanan was kind of very reluctant to trust people. And Sabine was just kind of do her thing. So it was great to see the progression of those characters till by the end, you got a very tight-knit family. So beautiful series. I love that series. If any listeners have no idea what we're talking about, you need to turn this off and subscribe first. Please subscribe first, but then go watch Star Wars Rebels. It's an amazing story, and if you have kids, again, I think it's a fantastic a series to watch with your children.
And if you have even a modicum of compassion or liking, an inkling of liking for Darth Maul, it will just be expanded so much through watching this series. So any potential Darth Maul fans, go out and watch it. It's beautiful.
That arc.
Yes.
We're way off here from where I really wanted to go, but that's okay. I told you we're just going to go. That arc, again, powerful storytelling with Obi-Wan and Maul, bringing them back together.
Yeah.
I don't want to give any spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen, but the final episode where they're together, having seen where they came as adversaries, and the fact of that, that the title of that episode was Twin Sons, was amazing, and so that was really cool to see.
It was beautiful. It truly was. That episode, and I think it was the season finale in season 2, in the temple, in the Sith temple, were two of the most amazing pieces of storytelling I have ever read, watched. I guess those are the ways you consume storytelling. But those were two of the most amazing stories I've ever seen.
For sure. Ian, what did you think about Rebels?
This is the moment where I have to confess that I have not yet seen Rebels.
That's okay.
Sorry, but
okay.
now
I've never
clearly
read
need
John.
Well, you've been a busy man writing a lot of books though, with the family. So I get that. But listen, you need to see this story. It's beautiful. As ST and I were talking about, it's a beautiful story of a family. Bottom line, we kind of diverted there for Star Wars Rebels, but that's okay. It's what happens when you have good stories. So I'm wondering, Ian,
sounds like it's a worthy diversion.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And on Disney Plus. So
absolutely, plug for Disney Plus. Ian, so I know that you said you grew up watching Star Wars. What other kind of stories did you like when you were a kid? What were your favorite kind of stories?
I mean, my parents raised me on, and it was mostly my mom's influence, I think, but on, sort of more quirky stuff than I think a lot of parents introduce their kids to. My mom was a fan of Star Trek long before I came around, so much so that, I mean, she had a massive crush on Leonard Nimoy, and when he came to Portland once for some sort of event, and she ran out into a crowd and kissed him on the cheek, which if you knew my mom, you'd be like, really? I mean, really, you did that? So like I said, Star Wars was with me from forever. Star Trek was with me from forever. And then I, the 80s were such a great time for movies where you're exploring something that's just a little bit off from reality, right? Whether it's Ghostbusters or E.T. or Back to the Future or whatever. And so
Goonies never
absolutely.
die. Say die.
Filmed
Yeah.
here in Oregon.
Astoria is on my bucket list, by the way.
Astoria is beautiful, and in fact, my spouse Jennifer and I recently were, not recently, well before COVID-19, were there, and you can sort of get close enough to the Goonies house that you can almost see it, but there are lots of signs around it saying, "Hey, this is a private residence. Please don't, please kindly leave us alone." But anyway, yeah, I mean, so those were the stories that I love, stories that got your imagination working, and that helped me feel more creative. I think, I wouldn't have had the language to say that as a kid, but now looking back, I love the kind of stories that open up these worlds that make you want to not only be part of them, but also think about how you can build worlds of your own.
What about you, ST?
As a kid? Or
yeah,
no?
as a kid.
Oh, okay. My gosh. I remember reading a lot of the Babysitter's Club books.
Mm-hmm.
I just discovered that was a Netflix series, and my childhood mind is blown just seeing this all on TV now. And apparently they've made them before, but I didn't see them. But like Ian, I liked the adventure stories. I liked anything that would take me to a different world or show me something I hadn't seen before. I was a huge musical theater fan. I still am. So I think back then kids had access to Cats. We didn't have quite the repertoire children have now, but Cats was amazing. And all of those musicals that would take you through song into these fantasy worlds just transported me to somewhere that I thought, this is a really great place to spend a few hours, and expanded my imagination in ways that really have served me as an adult too.
Both of you mentioned the word. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add to that. I also grew up practicing the songs and dance moves from the Pirates of Penzance, the 1983 movie.
No way!
Just like I can remember being on the playground in elementary school on those sort of chains that are in sort of a grid shape.
And
like weaving my legs into them and then letting the rest of my body fall backward, because that's what Kevin Kline does when he sings the Pirate King song. So, yep.
Every time we
musicals are right there.
You even more, Ian.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, so I guess it's musical confession time. I had a Disney album that it was like a Ronco Records. You guys may not remember Ronco. That was a mail order record company, and it was Walt Disney's greatest hits. And it was all these movies or these songs from the movies. Chim Chim Cheree and Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and
fine song.
Oh,
delightful song.
Oh, fantastic stuff. But I used to, I had that album memorized. I was an only child, and so a lot of times when I was in upper elementary school, I would be at home by myself, and I would turn the record player up as loud as I could, and I would dance around and sing those songs and act like I was in those movies. I really wanted to be a Mouseketeer. That was a life goal. And I thought if I could sing those songs and learn to dance like that, I could be in the Mickey Mouse Club. But I turned out to be a teacher instead. I guess in some ways an entertainer in your own right. So if you do it right. But yeah,
very much.
Thanks for sharing those. I've always interested to know those formative stories, the ones that we first latch onto. And it sounds like the three of us were all very much into those adventure stories. And I heard you both mention the word imagination that came through in those stories, and that would definitely be the same for me as well. That those stories, like E.T., what a wonderful story, and the Goonies, just again going back, kind of like Found Family. But it really opens your imagination as to what could be out there or what I could possibly do. Ian, you mentioned something too about creativity. What do you think the link is between imagination and creativity? How do the two play off one another?
That's a great question. I guess they're to me they're like sides of the same coin, right? You express your imagination is what sort of fuels creativity. I guess, for me, right? Because if you can, once you start dreaming it up, right, then you can start to think about how you actually make it and make it happen, right? And so I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think I would almost use them interchangeably somewhat, but really imagination is the what can you think of, what can you dream up, and creativity is the what can you make out of what you have dreamt up.
Yeah, that's
Right.
well said. What do you think, ST?
I think Ian's nailed it. The imagination is kind of the drafting stage, and the creativity would be the execution. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I think that's spot on.
So let me ask you both this: Did you have experiences in classrooms when you were in school? Did you, or just in whatever your learning experience was when you were younger? Did you have much of an opportunity to develop your imagination? I know the three of us sounds like we did that outside of schools, outside of classrooms. But did you ever have a teacher, or can you remember a time or a season in your education where you really, where imagination and creativity were encouraged? Can either of you think of examples?
Outside of an art classroom, like outside of a music or theater or art itself?
Well, yeah, I mean,
can't off the top of my head, no.
Yeah.
I can think of some teachers that taught outside of the box, and by using their imagination were able to reach me at the place where I was instead of what the text would have just dictated at me, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Like I had a teacher who I think Ian knows Shakespeare was not natural for me. I am a convert, and I needed a really good teacher who sat down and explained it in a vernacular and explained what some of those words really meant and what the context was. And I always thought it was written above my level for very rich, wealthy people that were far smarter than I was, and I didn't know he wrote for everyone. And so when I had a teacher kind of sit down and have one of those fireside chats and just explain, look, this is what it is, and this is where it comes from, and this is what it really means, instead of making it such an intellectual, cerebral subject. Like that was my point of access. And so thanks to someone meeting me where I was able to kind of jump in and really fall in love with something I never would have been able to access otherwise.
Cool. That's good. Yeah, that's great.
And for me, I don't know that it was I don't know that it was specifically around creativity and imagination, because I was the sort of kid that was, and I think continue to be the sort of person who that's just part of who I am. I bring those things as part of my personality, and I'm not trying to say that in like a pat myself on the back way. I'm just saying that in like, and that's just part of my nature.
Right.
But the teacher who, I had a teacher in 8th grade who fundamentally changed my life, just by seeing something in me and believing in me, and basically kicking me in the pants a little bit and saying, if you would kind of stop fooling around and actually apply yourself and a bit, you could be achieving more in school, and you could be a better student. You could just be in general, your life would improve. And I really took what she said to heart. And and honestly, like, I think that changed the trajectory of my entire life, because of her and because she was willing to, invest in me in that way.
Well,
I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, to hear you say that, that's the words every teacher really wants to hear. Is that they've had that kind of influence on a young person's life. And for anyone listening, if you have your own teacher that really kind of gave you a course correction, or as Ian said, kind of gave you that swift kick in the pants to say, hey, you can do this. If you have that teacher that you can remember, and if they're still around, I encourage you to reach out to them. Even if it's out of the blue and you haven't seen them in 20 years, that makes it even better. Coincidentally, I had a young man on LinkedIn reach out to me today. I taught him in 8th grade back in 1992, I think it was, and have not spoken with Jason, just a little bit on Facebook every now and then, but it's been years. And he reached out and said something very similar to about my class, that he remembered a particular lesson that we did when I had them outside doing this reenactment. And he said that was just the entire class was and transformative for him. And again, not, like you, not to pat myself on the back at all, but when a teacher hears those kind of things, that that fills my tank. That makes it, there's a lot of struggles that educators are facing right now. How do we do learning going forward? In this pandemic, how do we effectively do distance learning? How do we do a hybrid model? All of these things. So much is being asked of teachers. So I would just highly encourage you to give an encouraging word to a teacher that that maybe made a difference in your life, because I can testify that it makes a whole lot of difference whether you really realize it or not. But that's great that you guys both had examples that you could think of, and that's a sure sign that that person was doing a great job as an educator. So while we're on the subject of classrooms, I guess, if there's anything you could go back and change about your educational experience, what would that be? I mean, it could be anything. At any point, it could be college to kindergarten. If there's anything that you could go back, let's say I think we all love Back to the Future. If we get in that DeLorean and go back and change things, which I really am hoping that Doc will show up one day with that. But what would you change if you could go back? And if there's nothing, that's great. Then you won the lottery.
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I can go first. Sorry, the 4-year-old just popped his head in the room. So I would redo college, frankly, if I'm really honest about it.
Yeah.
I had fun in college, and I wasn't wild and crazy, but I had a good time. I had good friends and that sort of thing. I wish I had taken better advantage of the academic opportunities that I had while I was there. I wish I could go back and be a student there again. And because I just didn't take full advantage of it, and there was so much there that I could have done. So that's mine.
Gotcha.
I think you turned out okay, though.
I think you have turned out very well, my friend.
Well, thank you. I'm not saying that because I
you know how much I adore you. I think you are one of the most phenomenal and inspirational human beings on this planet right now, and that you are bringing Shakespeare, which for me was so inaccessible initially. You're bringing it to all kinds of people who might see the cover of your book in the store and be like, hey, Star Wars book, cool, grab it. People who might never read Shakespeare willingly are coming to him through you, and kids that find the language too complicated, they already know the story, so they can pretty much just follow along. And you are doing such a huge service to the world, and I am in awe of you, and I'm grateful for whatever you did in college that got you here. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much, and you are too kind. I don't say that about college. I don't say that about college because, I think I turned out horribly because I didn't apply myself in college. But I just know how much there was there for the taking,
right.
and I didn't take advantage of it as much as I could. So.
Yeah, no, I would probably have studied whatever it takes to become an Imagineer. I write books, an Imagineer in college, because I think that being able to do a job not the sole purpose, one of the goals of which is to create joy and happiness, and that incorporates both your creative and your logical brains, is a huge gift. And I don't see a ton of those out there. So if I were redoing my education, I would probably do whatever track it takes to get into that division of creating.
That's fascinating. That's cool. And well, you can still do it. It's still not too late. We may not be able to Imagineer, theme parks, but we can apply those same kind of principles of combining technical know-how with creativity and imagination to create. I mean, you're doing it. You're doing it right now. You're doing it as an author. And, I will say the same thing. I completely agree with what you said about Ian and the inspiration of his books. And 10 times over, don't sell yourself short either, because you are putting out books that people want to read. And this is the thing about literacy. We were sitting here talking about stories, and besides Shakespeare, it sounds like we were all kids who loved movies, and adults that still love movies. And while movies are fantastic vehicles for telling stories, they're not books. They're not the same. And the fact that both of you, I'm in awe of both of you, because you're published authors writing in the Star Wars realm or whatever realm. You're a published author, which is so many people's goals, or has that as a goal. But personally, you're writing Star Wars books, which I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. But ST, encouraging literacy at an early age, like you've done, even like with those Star Wars books for kids, for the young readers, that is such a hook that you can get kids into reading at an early age and enjoying it. One thing that we often do, and we've done this with your books, ST, on, again, Star Wars in the Classroom, is we like to find books that teachers can add to their classroom for their classroom libraries or their school libraries. And those are some that we've encouraged, say, hey, this is a great book for your classroom library, because that's for self-selected reading. So in education lingo, we call it SSR, self-selected reading. When a kid has time in class to read something on their own, or your teachers give them a chance to read, have a wide variety of books to choose from in their class, no matter what, across all kinds of topics. The bottom line is, right, just to get them to read. And so when you have
reading's reading, comic books, graphic novels, it's all reading.
Absolutely. And whatever we can do to promote literacy, especially at an early age, is so vitally important. And so having books like what you guys write, ones like Adam, like I was talking to last week about.
Adam Bray.
Yep, Adam Bray. Those books, Tricia, I mean, all you guys that are writing in the Star Wars Marvel universe or anything that is pop culture related is such a great way to introduce kids to new concepts, and especially just to reading. Disney once said that there's more treasure in books than in all the pirates' loot on Treasure Island. I really like that quote. There's more treasure in books, than all the pirates' loot on Treasure Island. And it's just getting that book cracked open for so many people. And so what you guys both have done is created gateways to literacy for so many. And so as a teacher, as an educator, I thank you both for doing that. So,
well, I'm going to chip in my own 2 cents really fast to the love fest here. Just to add that, I've been so lucky as an author, and especially specifically as a Star Wars author, to get to meet so many people who share this love of this thing that we all grew up with and that we've all loved our entire lives. And I meet some of the most lovely people in that. And you too. I mean, when I said in my email to you before, before we had the podcast, right? When I said that you are 2 of my favorite people among the people I've met through these circles, right? I'm not just saying that, right? Like it is. There's something about Star Wars fandom in general, but like you 2 in particular are people who, like, when I see your names pop up, whether it's on social media or an email in my inbox the other day, right? Like it just makes me smile because you're both doing such great and important work, and at the same time, also both of you, having family life and do all these things, right? And so I just want to add my share to this this love triangle here, right? Because it really is. I guess that came out a little weird, love triangle, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
We too.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We
Well,
love you so much. I love you, Ian.
For sure,
I love
dude.
you, Thomas. Like, I'm so grateful to just be talking to you guys right now. And same as Ian. Like, Thomas, I'm always telling people, do you know the Imagineering Ed guys? Do you know Star Wars in class? You should know them. Here's their site. Here's their Twitter. You guys just do incredible stuff the same way that Ian does. Like, making educational materials accessible on a level children want to reach them, and meeting those kids where they are and giving them an opportunity to explore things they never would if it wasn't under the guise of this galaxy far, far away. So thank you for just being such lovely humans.
Well, let's all right here pledge that we'll continue to do what we can to create things that encourage kids to love to learn. But thanks for that. All right, so I've got one more question for you guys, just for fun, because we're talking about stories a lot. If you could be a character in any movie or story, who would it be and why? Whoever wants to go first.
We're thinking.
I know.
Yeah, don't everybody speak at once.
I wish I had the Jeopardy movement, Jeopardy music right now.
Right. I will give an answer. I'll give an answer because it's a book that I just finished, and every time I picked it up, I thought to myself, "Oh, I love being in this world so much." And it's a book I first read about 3 years ago, and I'm rereading it. And my preface is that, I actually don't think I would do super well in a science fiction or fantasy type world. I often joke that, like, in the Tom Cruise version of War of the Worlds, I would be like the first guy who dies. Like, I would be gone immediately. So this book that I would like to be a part of. There's an author from the Northwest. His name is Brian Doyle, and he just died a couple of years ago at the age of, I think, like 51 of a brain tumor. And so, it was very, very sad because he died early. His writing is beautiful. And there is a novel that he wrote that I think you would call it a young adult novel, although I think it's probably equally, well, obviously I love it, and so it's equally as good. I've been rereading all of his books, which is why I happened to read it a few years ago, and now I've just reread it again. But it's called Martin. So it's Martin Marten, and it takes place in a little town on Mount Hood, which is a big mountain here in Oregon, and it's about the lives of the people and really all of the creatures in that community. So it focuses on the story of a teenager named Dave, and also this Marten, Ian, with whose name is Martin, I-N, and sort of the strange connection that they share. But he does such a beautiful job, Brian Doyle does, of just helping you understand that, like, there are stories there, in my backyard, there are a million stories going on right now, right? It is the dog, and it's the chickens, but it's also the bugs and the worms and the birds and, and the plants and the trees and the bushes, all of these things are all living stories that are extraordinary. If you knew each one of their stories, each one of them would be an extraordinary story. And he just weaves this in and out, and it's funny and it's touching. And so I would happily be part of that world. And in fact, if Brian Doyle were here right now, he would probably say, guess what? You are part of that world. But that's what I'll say.
Wow. Thanks for that recommendation. I know I'm fascinated by that now. Thanks for sharing that.
Me too.
Yeah. ST, what about you? Favorite character you'd be?
I would love to be Thor or Valkyrie, of course. But much like Ian, I might need to do a little fight training first. But I think for me, growing up, the movie of Cinderella was so beautiful because she was somebody who never let her circumstances or anything that was going on in the world around her break her spirit. And she always knew who she was and what she aspired to become, and she kept her focus on that reality, not on the one that she lived in. And I thought that was really, really inspirational. And then when our beloved Kenneth Branagh made a live action, that story just became so epic and almost Shakespearean in its retelling that would be the film, I guess, that I would love to get to live in. Is just that story of hope and knowing exactly who you are and what your soul's purpose is, and just always having that courage and being kind.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you both for sharing that. And I, again, thank you for taking time to chat with us today, a little bit about stories and why they're important. And I hope to be able to have you guys back again another time for another episode.
Anytime. I think we can talk a lot about Star Wars.
Yes.
Or Shakespeare.
Or Shakespeare, that's right. So very interested, though, in letting people know how they can follow your work. So we'll start with ST. If people want to follow your work, what's the best way for them to follow you?
My website is stbende.com, stbende.com. It has all of my social links, Twitter, Instagram, all of it. So that's probably the easiest way to get to me.
Okay. Ian, what about you?
I'm Ian at iandescher.com. Doescher is Doescher. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter as Ian Doescher, so I'm around.
Great.
And Ian will tweet out what he's reading that month, which is really cool too. So you can read along with him and see what his Shakespeare list is for the month.
Yeah, and
that's right.
That's so cool. And you know, I would highly recommend following both of these guys. And ST just posted another reading of one of her stories that she's written from A Galaxy Far, Far Away, which is really good for if you're needing. If you want to have a guided reading with your child, you can get a copy of what was the book you just read that you just posted, ST?
This one was the Galactic Adventure Storybook Collection, and I think the others have been from prequel trilogies or 5-minute storybooks, but anything that I've written that's around 5 minutes, I'm kind of going through all of those and reading them on YouTube because I know a lot of kids are at home right now, and it's something fun we can do together.
That's right. So you can order a copy of one of those books and then go to her website. She has those readings posted there, and then have your youngling follow along as she reads. It's a great way for kids to develop not only an interest in reading, but learn how to read as well. So again, guys, thanks for being here, and this has been a blast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. So if you're listening, thanks for joining us for today's show. If you'd like to learn more about our work, including our workshops, webinars, speaking engagements, and more, visit our website at imagineeringedu.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ImagineeringEd and on Facebook at Imagineering Education. We hope you'll also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. And when you do, don't forget to leave a review. So until next time, remember, there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away. Be blessed, everyone.